So, this is actually our very first Solar 201. So, if you were part of the co op, you probably attended a Solar 101 or at least received an invitation to one. Our 101 really covers the kind of nuts and bolts of going solar. So, we talk about what a solar co op is, solar technology, and then we also talk about the economics of going solar. Today is going to cover slightly different information, and that this is really your guide for how to be a solar owner. What are all the things that you need to know? Because you're really just beginning your solar journey. You just installed these panels, they're going to exist for 25 years. So, what are the things that you're going to need for the next 25 years? And so, just a reminder that these are all of the organizations that partnered with us on the solar co op last year. They were really excellent to work with, and you probably heard about us and the solar co op through them. If that's true, I highly recommend reaching out to them and letting them know that you went solar because of their outreach. That is incredibly meaningful, and it is really why these partners worked with us. They wanted to see actual solar in your community. And so, just kind of at a high level, our 2024 solar co op, we helped educate 110 residents in Center County about solar. We had 74 total co op members and 12 installations out of all of those co op members. And so you can see we also had installed solar and battery backup and more than $700,000 in energy savings over the next 25 years, which is huge and phenomenal. It's also additive, right? Because these are 12 solar installations on top of the solar installations from our first co op in 2021. And we have found that every I'm sorry. Every single solar installation leads to at least two more solar installations. So people see your solar and think, oh, I could do that. And then they pursue it and they go solar. And you may never even know that you had that impact. So that's really incredible. Our Pennsylvania program has been in existence since 2018, and over that time, we have run 20 solar co ops. And we have helped, oh, I'm sorry, that's a typo. We have helped 210 people go solar, not 2000, unfortunately, one day. And so we really see this as kind of, the beginning of our program. We have only been in existence for about 7 years. So it's really exciting to think about all of the impact that we're going to have over the coming years. So, as I said, today we're going to talk about what it takes to be a solar owner, what you need to be thinking about, and just to get on your radar as you are living in your home with your solar. So we're going to talk about kind of the nitty gritty of solar ownership. We're going to provide you with some resources for your solar journey. And we're going to show you ways to stay involved with sun. And I'll also explain why it's really critical to get involved with solar policy, and give you a very concrete example of what's going on right now. And as Chris said, we're actually going to do a Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you do have questions, please type them in the chat. Chris may answer them in the chat, and I might answer them at the end. Okay, so you've probably at this point learned all about net metering, but I just want to kind of quickly go through the fundamentals of net metering in case it's, still new or still a concept you're not quite comfortable with. So in this scenario, this would be your home, and these panels can either be on the roof or ground mounted, but they are going to be soaking up sunshine, and then that will generate direct current or DC. Your home uses alternating current, AC. So what's going to happen is that electricity that those panels are generating is going to switch from DC to AC at your solar inverter. And then that alternating current will go into your general energy mix in your electric panel that will power loads in your home. And if you are generating more electricity than your home is actually using, you will export energy out to the grid. So you can see this is still a grid tied home. And you should have your bidirectional utility meter so it can measure energy that's coming from the grid and going to the grid. So net metering is that electricity that you over generate and don't use within your home. This is really going to be happening primarily in the very sunny months over the summer. And so, you're generating more electricity than your home is using. That electricity is being exported to your grid. It's going to go from your home over to your neighbors, where your utility is going to sell it at full retail rate. The electricity that you at the end of the month have net exported will be credited to your electric bill. And those credits are valued at full retail rate. So that is really important. That is your utility telling you that your solar generation is of equal value to the electricity that they sell you. And so at the end of the month, you will get on your electric bill. It'll say, actually, I have a utility bill. So this is for Penelec. I know West Penn Power, it might be a similar bill. I don't have an exact West Penn Power electric bill. So hopefully this doesn't look too different. But in this example, this utility bill has this middle section here, which is your net meter bank information. So when they came in to this month, they had a certain amount of kilowatt hours in their bank. They sent from their home to the grid 985 kilowatt hours and took from the grid into their home 785 kilowatt hours. So on net, they actually exported 200 kilowatt hours. So you can see that their bank actually grew by 200 kilowatt hours. Because the other thing that I didn't say is that every month you're going to be banking those kilowatt hours and they roll over from month to month, kind of like rollover minutes for a cell phone. So that's really fantastic because in the summer, you're going to be adding credits to your bill. And in the winter, when it's less sunny, you're actually going to be spending down those credits. So you're going to be saving on your electric bill in two different ways. The first is just your solar energy that is directly powering things in your home. That's energy you don't have to buy, so you're saving that money. The second is with these kilowatt hours that get banked. So in the winter, when there is more cloud coverage and the sun is just at a lower angle and you're not generating as much, you are able to spend down those banked hours that you made over the summer. And so you can see in this bill, this customer would have owed 76 plus this 1041 customer charge. And so with their net metering credit, the credit is at this full retail rate value. They were actually able to reduce their entire bill down to just that customer charge, the 1023. And so you'll see your bill every month, depending on how much you're offsetting, your bill will probably be very, very low compared to what it used to be. And just one thing I will mention is that we give these presentations in certain areas, and we really like to be able to show an electric bill from that utility so that people can see it and know exactly where to look on their bill. So if you are comfortable with sharing an electric bill, we can do something like this where we remove all of your information and basically just use the numbers. But if you're comfortable with that and you share a bill with us, we would really appreciate that. It really helps us kind of share meaningful, direct information with folks. And so one of the biggest questions that we get at Sun is, am I being net metered correctly? So this often happens because you think that your utility bill seems too high, or it doesn't seem to match the amount of energy that your monitoring software says you're generating. So let's take those two pieces separately. So first, you are only going to be net metered for full retail rate if you are part of West Penn Power. And for Center County, I think that's the only investor-owned utility. The IOUs are required by law to net meter at full retail rate if you're on the default service plan. If, however, you purchase your energy through an alternate retail supplier, like through PA Power Switch, they do not have to net meter you at full retail rate. Or if you are part of a rural electric cooperative, you do not necessarily get full retail rate net metering. So if either of those situations applies to you, you may not be getting the full credit that you deserve. And if you have not, well, if you're part of an REC, that's a separate issue. If you are subscribing to something through PA Power Switch, we highly, highly, highly recommend that you switch back to your utility's default service plan. That will make sure that you are maximizing your return for your investment. Okay, so then next, after you're sure that that is true, you need to monitor your solar array. Make sure that the monitoring software is working. It is showing you that your system is working and that it is generating electricity in a way that you would expect, that there are no faults, no failures, there isn't suppressed production for any reason. If everything is looking okay, then your electric bill with your net metering information is going to be kind of the key to how things are being credited. At the end of the month, your bill is going to be your total electric usage minus your solar generation, because you're going to be basically just paying for whatever you're importing from the grid, and know that you're offsetting with that bill credit. And so the second part up here that I was talking about with making sure that you're being credited correctly by your utility. So that is kind of step one. Step two is making sure that you're understanding the data that you're collecting from your monitoring software. And that's where this piece comes in. So your monitoring software tells you how much electricity your solar system is generating. That's really kind of all of the information you're going to get from that. From your electric meter outside of your house, you're going to see how much electricity is coming from the grid or going to the grid now that it's bidirectional. But the last piece of information that you're really missing to understand, your entire usage of electricity is your home's energy consumption. How much energy is your house actually using that your solar has generated before it exports that energy to the grid? And that's that key piece of information that is sometimes missing. Now, for this co-op, if you got battery backup, it automatically had installed as part of it a consumption monitor. And so in that way, you will be able to actually see how much electricity your home is using over the course of the day. I'll show you what that looks like. So in this picture, this is from an Enphase consumption monitor. So this may actually be what some of you have. But here, this is going to be in blue, the solar production over the course of the day. You can see it kind of starts around 7 a.m. and goes down around 7 p.m. And in orange is what the home is using over the course of the day. So around let's say 2:30, somebody comes home and they turn on the lights, the television, they start up a load of laundry, and this is all going to be electricity that they're using that is coming directly from their solar generation. So whatever their panels are generating, it is directly supplying their home energy usage. And that is true to about 6 o'clock. Around then, the sun starts going away. They're still, watching TV, the air conditioning's on. At this point, the sun's down, the panels are no longer producing. You would be pulling all of your electricity from the grid. And so, in this way, you can kind of see, this is all going to be exported, this is all going to be imported, and this is going to be maybe maybe roughly even, maybe a little bit export. But you kind of, without that energy consumption piece of data, you really don't know your full energy picture. And so it's going to be really hard for you to know if you're being net metered correctly without that information. Uh, but we do have solutions for you if you don't have that consumption monitor. So we have a solar help desk. Like I said, the most common question we get, or a very frequent question, is, I think my solar is not working because my electric bill is really high. So what we can do is work with you to get your solar generation information. We'll look at your electric bill. In some cases, we may recommend that you install a consumption monitor. Sometimes we can kind of figure out what's going on in the meantime. But our help desk services are completely free. And while, you may have used them as you were going solar, we have a proposal comparison service that we offer, and we'll do the roof review. We also help folks after they've gone solar. So here you can see we help you figure out, is your production app working? We'll look at your electric bill, but then we are also here to serve as a consumer protection and remediation service for you. Again, it's completely free. Sun is unbiased. We are not aligned with any vendor, and we're not going to be trying to sell you anything. We're really just here to answer your questions and make sure you feel confident as you go through the process of figuring out whether or not you're getting the full return on your investment. So off to the right, we have our phone number and our email address. So I think Chris is going to add that information into the chat if he hasn't already. You can also take a screen grab of this if you would like. And I'm gonna move on. But I guess I just wanted to wrap this section by saying, if you think that you're not being net metered correctly, my first recommendation would be to double check that you're enrolled for your default service plan from your utility. Second, talk to us. Send us your utility bill. Share any generation information you can. We'll try and help as much as possible. If you have consumption information, that's going to make it a lot easier to make sure that you know what's going on. After that, we can talk to you about options for if you're really not being net metered correctly. We have ways to help you through that process to make sure that your utility is crediting you fairly. Okay, so in the next section, I want to talk a little bit about solar renewable energy credits, or SRECs. So an SREC is a credit or a certificate given every time you generate 1,000 kilowatt hours or 1 megawatt hour. It's really meant to be proof that you generated energy from solar here in Pennsylvania. That is information that is tracked in a shared database. You can actually access it as a public member. I often access it because it has really great information about where in the state the solar installations are actually being installed. You can get down to zip code level information. So it's very cool. Now, SRECs themselves are bought and sold on an open market. You are probably already registered for them at this point. I know that Sun Directed was sending out information about ways to sell your SRECs. We had also followed up with you after the co-op was complete. So you may already be finished with this process. If you are not, though, or if you just don't really know what these SRECs are that you've been hearing all about, um, it is really due to a policy in Pennsylvania called a portfolio standard. It's the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard. And this was passed way back in 2005. The legislature required that utilities in Pennsylvania sell a certain portion of electricity that comes from alternative energy sources. And alternative here kind of means renewable, means some other things too, but mainly just not natural gas, coal, and oil, which are the kind of predominant energy supply. Um, and so, this requirement to sell a certain portion of electricity from this energy source. So for solar, it is half of 1%. That's the requirement. But so in Pennsylvania, utilities can't generate their own electricity. So what they do is they buy your SRECs. They buy your certificate, and it makes it look like they now have ownership of your solar electricity, and they will sell that, and that is how they meet that requirement. So it is really a way for them to, meet the rules of this law. And that half of 1%, it actually we met that goal back in 2021. The goal has not increased since then. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But um, how kind of aggressive that goal is determines the value of the SREC on the market. So you can imagine that if we were today to increase that solar requirement from 0.5% to, say, 10%, your SRECs would likely now be 20 times as valuable. So you could see how policy really impacts directly kind of the financial implications of solar. So here, what I have is kind of a breakdown of SRECs and the different policies in different states in the region. So in the map on the left, all of those percentages that you see are kind of the overall portfolio standards requirement for a renewable energy. And so we broke down Pennsylvania, and it's just 8%. And that goal we met in 2021, and it just plateaued. It never changed. You can see from that map, every other state has a goal for the future. They're also all goals that are much larger than 8%. On the right, these are the states that have a solar carve out. So these are very specifically solar goals, whereas the ones on the left are just kind of generally renewable goals. So that solar carve out is going to be part of what impacts your SREC value. And so you can see Delaware, DC, they have big goals, New Jersey, and they have high SREC values. Maryland is kind of a different situation for a variety of reasons, but Pennsylvania has the lowest goal, and we have the lowest SREC value. So again, you can kind of see that direct link between policy and the return on investment that you as a solar homeowner would get. Now, so when your system was up and running, Sun Directed would have registered your system for SRECs. So that should already be complete, and you should have received documentation saying as much. If you have not already sold your SRECs, basically there are 3 different ways to sell. And because it's a market, they have different kind of risks and different rewards related to them. So you can sell on the spot market, which is essentially, seeing today's price, I'm going to sell it because it looks really good. So this is the highest risk because it's a market. You don't know what it's going to do, but it has a potential for the highest reward because it can be done kind of in the moment. And then there are, levels below that. So upfront would be basically purchasing, I think it's a few years worth of, or selling a few years worth of SRECs at, whatever today's value is, plus a certain percentage. And so that's the upfront. So if you are curious about other ways to or how to sell your SRECs. We have relationships with a few different aggregators, so we would recommend kind of shopping around, see what is a good deal for you. It can be a profit of, a few $100s a year. And that is going to be meaningful, but again, I just want to continue to iterate the link between policy and the fact that you could be seeing higher SREC values than the $30 per SREC that they currently sit at. Okay, and so I wanted to switch into maintenance because this is something that I am sure um, has already maybe come across your mind, and maybe it's not. Maybe you haven't thought about it and you're just realizing right now, oh, at some point I'm going to have to maintain this. So your system is going to last for 25 years. You have warranties on different components of your system. So what we recommend is keep all your paperwork in one place, know where it is. Maybe if possible, keep it near your well, it can't be near your inverter, but near your electric service panel. That way you kind of know where it is. If you have a question about it, you can get there quickly. Another alternative is what I have on the right here, which is a solar sticker. We sell these. We can also have them prepared for you because we worked with Sun Directed. We have a lot of this information. But basically you would put in your system size, who installed it, who's the owner, lots of different information. And then you would put it on your inverter or on your electric service panel. And then you just have it there. You don't have to think about it. You know where it is. You could even write yourself a note. Paperwork is in upstairs filing cabinet. And that will help you kind of keep track of all of those things that, in even like a couple of years, you will have completely forgotten and it will have just left your mind and you won't even know where that documentation is. And that's also helpful because you see at the bottom right of the maintenance sticker, it includes hardware and warranties. So this is really important. Look at your warranties early, know how long they are, how long you expect your inverter to last. If you have micro inverters, how long will they last? Because if something fails or stops producing as well, you should know whether or not it's going to be covered by your warranty. All right, so breaking it down, we have some recommendations for what you should do by month, by year, and then more infrequently. So to reiterate earlier, you want to look at your bill every single month. You want to make sure that it seems as if you're being net metered correctly. If something seems off, unexpected, check out your monitoring software. Make sure that it is producing at the levels you would expect. At that point, if it is not, reach out to us or reach out to Sun Directed directly and find out what's going on with your system. Every year, and so I didn't mention this with net metering, but this is important. So net metering, your monthly credits are going to roll over month to month, and you're receiving that credit at full retail rate. That's all true. The annual billing cycle for your electricity is going to go from June 1st to May 31st. At May 31st, your your credits are not going to roll over anymore. You will basically be credited for whatever is left in your bank at the lower price to compare. Okay. So month to month, you've got full retail rate. At the end of May, what we call the true up period, your leftover credits are going to be valued at price to compare. And you may get that as a check for the value of your credits. I've heard some people get a gift card. Some people have been sent a Visa credit card or a debit card or something in the mail. And then some people have taken those credits and rolled them over and applied them basically to offset the cost of that fixed customer charge. So there are a few different ways that you'll get that true up value at the end of the year. And then the last thing we recommend is every 5 years, especially at the end of the first 5 years, we really recommend that you have your system looked at by somebody who does maintenance. So your installer may, I'm not sure, I can't remember off the top of my head if SunDirected does, but if they don't, they may have a recommendation for you for somebody who does do maintenance. And basically, they'll come out, they'll inspect the system, make sure that it is performing at the efficiency you would expect for a 5-year-old system. They might clean it, they might wipe off some dust. In general, those are not things that you are going to need to do. Um, we get enough rain and snow that it's going to clean off the panels kind of just naturally through the elements. Um, One thing I would say though is just keep an eye out for birds nesting under your panels. If you didn't get a squirrel guard or a critter guard, that's just one of those things that can sometimes happen that it's easy to not notice right away. So we just recommend kind of glancing up every once in a while, make sure that, if you can see, get a vantage under the panels, make sure nothing's living under there. If it is, take a hose or something. But in general, you will not need to clean off your own panels. And then I had a question from a co-op member about solar panel recycling. And, this is something that is all the way at the end of the lifetime of your system. So very, very far away. It's the other thing I will say is that the solar panel recycling industry is also very, very young. It's almost brand new. People are still just kind of starting with solar panel recycling. So this will change drastically by the time your system is at its end of life. But what I will tell you is that we are currently in a situation that is kind of it's called a linear lifetime, where you buy your panels, you every time something fails, you buy a new thing, and then at the end of the lifetime of everything, you landfill all of those components. So that's your kind of linear lifetime. What the industry is working towards is something called a circular life cycle. So you can see that off on the left. Basically, the idea here is to, at every step of the process, reduce the amount of materials that are being fully manufactured and fully replaced on your system. So part of that is recycling panels at the end of their lifetime. And there are some components of a solar panel that can be recycled and can get kind of scrap material value for it. And then other components that need to be treated either as toxic waste or as kind of a technology waste. Um, and so there are some recycling companies, but many of them only work with large scale solar developers who have, hundreds to thousands of solar panels to dispose of at any given time. They're not really working with individual homeowners like you who only have, a dozen or so panels on your property. So all of this to say, it is very early for you to be thinking about recycling. Not only because you just had your system installed, but also because the industry is so nascent. So hopefully this is an area that really grows and develops over the coming years, and we will definitely be paying attention to it and letting and kind of just providing information along the way about solar panel recycling. And so I want to move into providing you with some resources for the lifetime of your solar system. So, the first really excellent resource that I would recommend is our Solar Owner's Manual. So, this is a free guide, has a lot of the information that I've talked about today. You can see that website on the screen, and I think Chris is also going to put it into the chat. But it also covers many other issues. So, what do I do if I have a billing issue? How do I know if something is not working? Who do I go to if that's true? Is my solar production guaranteed? That is something that is different from installer to installer. How do I make a claim on my warranty if something is wrong? What happens when the power goes out, which we're going to talk about in a minute? And should I get solar checkups? So these are some of the questions that you'll get answers to. It's a really, really great resource. So again, highly recommend downloading that. Just keep a copy of it. You can even print one out and keep it with all of your solar documentation in case something comes up that you kind of have a manual to go to right away. So, secondly, this is something that I know is kind of at top of everybody's mind in general right now, maybe less so for you since you've just gone solar. But we see a lot of folks thinking about electrifying and also thinking about doing energy efficiency upgrades. So, we wanted to provide you with a really great resource. This is from Rewiring America. They have a website where they actually have an incentive calculator. It'll show you all of the different federal rebates and tax credits available for home electrification projects right now and energy efficiency. Um, the reason that you should, in particular, be thinking about this is that your solar systems are now providing your home energy. They were sized to provide a certain percentage of energy to offset your annual energy production, right? So that would have been calculated as of last year when you met with Jacob from Sun Directed. If in the future you electrify an appliance, maybe you add a heat pump, you get an electric dryer or hot water heater, that is going to change the amount of electricity that your home is now using. Um, the other big one is if you purchase an electric vehicle, that those are both going to increase your annual energy consumption. So your solar system will now be offsetting less of your annual energy use. So that's just kind of an important thing to keep in mind. And the other thing is around energy efficiency upgrades. So they work the opposite way. They basically make your home more energy efficient. They kind of plug up those leaks. So in you should be able to use less energy, and so your solar panels will actually offset more. So, um, again, highly recommend Rewiring America, an excellent resource. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the power outages. I do hope that um, you have heard this before, but there is a very, very common misconception with solar that if you have solar and there is a power outage in your neighborhood, but the sun's out, that you will be fine. You will not lose power. That is not true. Um, if there is a power outage in your neighborhood, because you are grid tied, your solar will shut off. That is a safety mechanism. It keeps your solar from backfeeding electricity onto the lines. If a power line worker is out there, we don't want them getting electrocuted. So, if you have frequent or long utility outages, or if you have a really critical, like medical equipment or a well pump load at home that needs to be powered during an outage, then battery storage might be a good idea if you did not get it at this time. We have a battery storage guide for homeowners. Highly recommend if you're thinking about it, if you have questions. We have this guide. We also have a 1 hour webinar that you can watch. It's on YouTube. Um, it just has a ton of resources around whether or not storage is a good option for you, how it works, does your solar system continue to supply your battery system during an outage, things like that. So I will say batteries are currently pretty expensive, but what we're hearing is that they're about 10 years behind solar panels. Back in 2015, solar panels still pretty expensive, really just kind of for like the certain homes, I guess. Um, Batteries are getting more and more cost effective and more efficient every single year. We are continuing to pay attention to these technologies, to the prices, and so we are going to continue to provide that information on our website and with all of you. If batteries are of interest to you, we highly recommend reaching out. Find out if they're a good fit for you and your home, your lifestyle. And it's also important to remember that energy independence, which you can get from solar, from battery, from all of these components, it really protects you from these bad policy changes that can really happen at any time. And, that may have sounded a little bit ominous, and that's because that was foreshadowing the fact that there have been some bad policy changes. So, this is a story from 2 years ago, and it's actually out of Arizona. When it happened, I remember lots of people at Sun just saying, wow, they're really telling the truth in a very surprising way. So, what happened is Arizona has a public service company. So, that is similar to our PUC, the Public Utilities Commission. So, the public service had an expert witness say that utilities oppose customer-owned solar energy policies because they cut into shareholder profits. Your solar system costs utilities their money, and they don't like that. And so they're going to do lots of different things to uh, try to make sure that they are maximizing profits at every turn. So that's why we think it's really important to stay involved with Sun. Yes, you just went solar through one of our co-ops, and we were delighted to be able to help you through that process. But we don't stop helping you just because now you've gone solar. As I said, with the help desk, we're really here to answer questions that you have around, maintenance or troubleshooting your electric bill. But we also exist to do advocacy around solar policy. And so our model is that we go solar, join together, and fight for your energy rights. We pay attention to solar policies so that you do not have to. I am more than happy to pay attention to what's going on in Harrisburg, if that's not something you're interested in. So on the right, you can see this was an action alert that we had actually sent out a couple of weeks ago. There was a threat against net metering in Pennsylvania, and we noticed it. We rallied very hard, very quickly to make sure that net metering was protected in Pennsylvania. So, other policies we're working on right now, we are protecting the solar tax credits, which you were hopefully able to use for going solar for your system. Those are also under threat right now. Net metering is almost constantly under threat. And then community solar is something that we're working to pass. This would be to allow people who can't go solar on their own homes to still be able to benefit from solar and have those credits applied to their electric bill to lower their rates. Um, Portfolio standards, as I said before, to help increase SREC values. And then things like improving interconnection and permitting processes. These are really going to be on a local level. They might be with a municipality or with a utility, but it means that it's a smoother, faster, cheaper process for people to go solar, which really helps to reduce those barriers. And so if that is something that is interesting to you, either just staying connected with sun in general or specifically thinking about policy, we have lots of different ways for you to get involved. Um, One might just be sharing information about us on social media or through email, but it might also be using an action alert or sending a postcard. So we have a volunteer website at the bottom. We also have what's called a solar action team. We meet once a month and we talk about solar policies in Pennsylvania and federally and take action to support good solar policies.